Thank you, Chairman Kane, Vice Chairman Hamilton, and distinguished members of the Commission for the opportunity to testify before you today. My name is Alan Reiss. I was the Director of the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey's World Trade Department, which operated the World Trade Center until it was net leased. The people of the Port Authority, who also operate the region's major airports, bridges and tunnels, maritime ports, and the PATH rail system, will always remember September 11th as the worst day in our long and proud history. This was a profound personal loss for us at the Port Authority. The World Trade Center was our headquarters, and 84 members of the Port Authority family died that day. Most of them were my dear friends, including 16 who were civilian building management staff who reported directly to me and responded to their emergency posts that day, helping to direct the greatest rescue ever on American soil, saving tens of thousands of lives, but losing their own lives in the process. I grieve the loss of my friends every day, and not a day passes that I do not think of them all. My heart continues to go out to their families and to the families of all the victims who died that day. I also grieve with the families of the firefighters, police officers, rescue workers, and military personnel who made the ultimate sacrifice to keep our country safe, and I know the same is true for everyone in the Port Authority family. Though our losses are still unimaginable, we remain unbowed in our determination to move forward. Commissioners, the Port Authority adopted the Incident Command System in the 1980s as a way of managing all incidents at its facilities, such as the World Trade Center and the metropolitan area airports. Port Authority and New Jersey State Police trained all the World Trade Department operations staff and the majority of senior staff, more than 26 people in the World Trade Department alone, in the use of the Incident Command System so we could work with uniformed responders as an effective team. The World Trade Center had a written emergency procedure manual that dealt with numerous types of emergencies. This manual is updated and revised every year as a joint effort between the World Trade Center operations staff and the Port Authority Police. And as the world changed over the last decade, so did the emergency manual and its training. The Port Authority Police held annual tabletop drills that involved both the police and the civilian management at the World Trade Center to exercise these plans and their decision-making capability. The Port Authority Police and the World Trade Department staff enjoyed a close working relationship with the New York City Fire Department. Port Authority police radios were given to Engine 10, Ladder 10, and Battalion 1 in the 1980s to improve the communications between the Port Authority Police and the Fire Department located at the World Trade Center. Port Authority staff and the Fire Department even drilled together at the World Trade Center. This included a simulated 5-alarm full-floor fire on the 92nd floor of 2 World Trade Center on June 6, 1999. In addition, the Fire Department high-rise unit would perform annual inspections. 6 weeks prior to the September 11th attacks, the World Trade Center was net leased to a private developer, Silverstein Properties, which began managing the facility with its own executives. I and a select group of Port Authority employees assisted the Silverstein staff during a planned 3-month transition period. Nevertheless, Port Authority employees, even those not on the Silverstein transition team, immediately responded to their former battle stations as they've been trained to do over the years on 9/11. The Port Authority filed with the Bureau of Fire Prevention a fire safety plan for the World Trade Center buildings in accordance with the Bureau's guidelines, and the Port Authority operations supervisors were certified by FDNY as fire safety directors. The floor wardens and their fire safety team members received specific training on their responsibilities, including a videotape presentation to ensure consistency in training, red hats, flashlights, whistles, all above and beyond what local law required. The 1993 terrorist bombing was a wake-up call to the nation. I was 150 feet away from the van when it exploded on the B2 level, entering my office and killing my co-workers back then. The 1993 terrorist attack disclosed various issues, such as the loss of the fire alarm public address system due to damage from the explosion, the failure of the emergency generator cooling systems, loss of all lighting in the stairwells when Con Edison power was turned off to allow the fire to be fought, confusion in the transfer floor exit passageways, and difficulties with the FDNY radio communications within the complex. To address those issues, the Port Authority Board of Commissioners authorized more than $200 million in the various upgrades to the complex over the last decade. These included the installation of a 2 million-watt tertiary backup power system fed from New Jersey Public Service Electric and Gas, battery packs for every other fluorescent light fixture in the exit stairwells, elevator cab lighting, and also for the fire alarm system. We added photoluminescent paint to the stairwells and to the handrails to guide evacuees in an emergency, and we added glow-in-the-dark floor signs and trailblazing signs at the horizontal crossovers. The Port Authority even purchased evacuation chair stretchers for any mobility-restricted person working at the World Trade Center. and the Port Authority installed new decentralized fire alarm systems with redundant communication circuits and control panels. Following a multi-agency critique at One Police Plaza of the response to the 1993 terrorist attack that I attended, it was evident that the FDNY had communication problems at the World Trade Center. I worked with the New York City Fire Department on its needs, secured Port Authority funding, and the Port Authority installed a repeater system on the FDNY's VHF citywide radio channel. This system was tested by the Fire Department and found to provide excellent communication throughout the complex. It was normally left off and activated by the Fire Department when required. And in light of the transmissions recorded on the dictaphone tapes recovered from the site that day, it appears that the repeater system functioned as intended for those who utilized it on September 11th. When requested by Commissioner Scarpetta, we have provided detailed information to the Fire Department on the World Trade Center repeater system, since it may serve as a model for future systems required in high-rise buildings in New York City. Mr. Chairman, the employees of the Port Authority have a long history of distinguished public service. September 11, 2001 subjected Port Authority staff to a most difficult test. During a time of compelling need, these men and women performed extraordinary acts of heroism and service, and their unerring devotion to the agency highlighted their shared values of duty, loyalty, and commitment to the public. Staff from all Port Authority units, not just the World Trade Department, rose to the challenge that day, assisting in the evacuation. 84 members of our Port Authority family perished that day, both civilian and Port Authority police. There were many acts of valor that day. Mr. Chairman, the world has significantly changed for everyone as a result of 9/11, and I believe there are still lessons to be learned. However, due to time constraints, they are in my written statement to the Commission. No building or fire safety code can cover every potential terrorist act, some which we can't even imagine today. I've been told that the energy from one of the planes hitting the tower was equal to the energy released by a tactical nuclear weapon. The forces were just incredible, slicing through the steel columns as if they were butter. The towers actually experienced 3 separate events: the initial impact, the fuel-air explosion and resulting overpressures, and finally a raging fire. If the World Trade Center complex did not exceed codes in so many ways, the 9/11 losses would have surely been much more horrific. The evacuation of the towers took more than 4 hours alone in 1993. Therefore, the Port Authority fully supports the 21 recommendations from the New York City Department of Buildings World Trade Center Building Code Task Force, 13 that were introduced as recent legislation in the New York City Council. Many of these recommendations come out of the extraordinary improvements that the Port Authority implemented at the World Trade Center, as the New York City Building Commissioner testified when she introduced the legislation. Port Authority staff, including myself, have spent a great deal of time in the last year and a half working with the National Institute of Science and Technology and this Commission to make sure that what happened that day never happens again. Fortifying the buildings is a last resort. We must do everything we can to prevent other Americans from suffering the pain and anguish that the 1993 and 9/11 families suffered. But we also cannot forget that pain and anguish. I have not, and we continue to deal with the families of staff lost in both events. They are forever in my thoughts and prayers. Thank you.